Hello, my name is Alex Webb. I will be presenting on Varus torque on the elbows of pitchers in baseball. What is Varus torque? Why Varus torque is of concern? What causes Varus torque to increase? And what can we do with Varus torque information are just a few of the topics I will cover during this presentation. What is Varus torque? Varus torque is the force required to resist the valgus stress that occurs during the arm cocking and arm acceleration phase of throwing. As we see here, this arm is in external rotation and valgus, while the elbow is having to resist this force that is being applied on the humerus and the tip, ulna, and radius of the arm. So this Varus torque that is applied at the elbow is helping keep the arm attached to the body. And this is a result of Newton's third law of every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So Varus torque helps hold the arm on the body while it goes through this arm cocking and arm acceleration phase of throwing. Why is Varus torque of concern? Pitchers make up 7 of the 10 highest paid players in Major League Baseball. So owners, doctors, and coaches want to keep these players on the field as much as possible. A study by Sloak et al. Shows that pitchers are 3 times more likely to be injured than position players. This is crazy with the fact that there are 8 position players compared to 1 pitcher on the field at all times. 67% of injuries in Major League Baseball are shoulder and elbow injuries, and a study by Campanile showed that shoulder injuries are actually decreasing while elbow injuries are increasing. So this shows that as shoulder injuries are going down, and they are part of the 67%, that elbow injuries are a large percentage of that 67%. A quarter of Major League Baseball and 15% of minor league baseball pitchers have history of UCL reconstruction surgery, and I have to work with 3 pitchers that during the offseason that are all recovering from UCL surgery, and one of them is recovering from his second UCL surgery of his career. So hopefully with them coming into us this offseason, we are able to help take some of the lessons I've learned during the study of this and apply it to their rehab and help prepare them for the season and a long, successful career. So what causes increased Varus torque? Well, Sloak et al. Found velocity has been linked to increased Varus torque levels, and I have a graph on the next slide that kind of shows that correlation. Professional level pitchers' arms rotate at 7,000 degrees per second. That was in a study from Campanile. And then mechanical differences. As we see between these 2 pitchers, this pitcher on the left is leaning his torso to the left, and a study by Hackinson et al. Spoke to the level of trunk lean and how it increases Varus torque of the elbow. So as this pitcher leans to the left, he's going to create a longer lever for his arm to displace, place valgus stress on the arm, which in turn puts an increased amount of Varus torque on the elbow. So this guy on the right, in turn, may have lower levels of Varus torque due to the fact that he does not have an extreme trunk tilt to the left, which may in turn be resulting in a lower amount of external rotation, which is helping to keep his arm healthier, but his velocity may be lower than this guy's, but that is not a direct correlation between trunk tilt and velocity. And then also anatomical adaptations. A study by Noonan et al. Showed that humeral retrotorsion, which with increased in the throwing arm, showed to increase Varus torque levels, which means that the shoulder sat back further within the shoulder socket. The humeral head sat back further in the shoulder socket, which increased the ability for the pitcher to increase their external rotation, which increased the surface area to apply Varus torque. Therefore, as it had a longer time to create that torque, it was able to increase those numbers and potentially lead to injury. Velocity and Varus torque, this is a graph from the Sloak et al. Study. It shows a slight positive correlation between velocity and Varus torque. Each color represents a different a different pitcher, and each little plus sign is a pitch that player made. So as we see this pitcher here, that they had different levels of Varus torque applied, whether it was less or more, due with ball velocity. And as ball velocity increased, Varus torque levels increased throughout the pitches. But some pitchers flatlined. There wasn't really an extreme amount of elbow Varus torque being applied, whether their velocity went up or down or stayed the same. And that can be mechanical or an anatomical adaptation that kind of mitigated those changes. But we do see a slight positive correlation between velocity and Varus torque. So what do we do with Varus torque data? Well, we look at load management, monitoring intensity and volume, and then change up practice plans. As we see here, monitoring intensity and volume can mean several things. Intensity is going to be how hard these players are throwing the ball, and volume is just the amount that they throw. So we see that Campanall looked at load management, and we see that in a graph by Leafblad and all on the right, that changing the amount of time spent throwing intervals can necessarily be a waste of time. We see that as the distance increased, the Varus torque also increased. However, once you got to 180 feet, and then you went from there to the mound, there was no increase in Varus torque. So you're essentially throwing more through that throwing program and building up volume that may not be necessary in order to condition the arm. So that may be a way to kind of mitigate the amount of throws that an arm is being exposed to before you get to the high demanding outputs that you see when you're on the mound as a pitcher. We also see that shoulder rotation degrees kind of increased as distance increased. And as we saw, as you see this, as that shoulder rotation increased, so did the Varus torque. So that might be something that you also look at as a practitioner when rehabbing players, is as you get back to a certain point, it may be more beneficial to go ahead and get to the mound and become more skilled at your craft, more so than rehabbing at a distance where you're exposing yourself to higher levels of torque that you would also get on the mound, but not be as skill specific. And so we also see here that as the velocity increased at the distances that Slowick and all were saying that ball velocity and Varus torque have a correlation, that as ball velocity increased, so did the Varus torque that was placed on the elbow. So that's kind of a reassuring thing there for that study as well. And then changing up practice plans. A study by Escamilla and all found that fastballs, sliders, and curveballs all placed greater Varus torque than changeups did when being thrown. So that kind of shows that if you change up your practice plans to where you're throwing either less total pitches or you're throwing more fastballs and changeups and less sliders and curveballs, that may take down the volume of the amount of Varus torque that is being exposed to those elbows, therefore helping to keep your arms healthier and ready for when that really matters in the game. So some of the research tools that were used during this study, or during these studies, the reflective markers and stuff were used for the trunk tilt, and the study on trunk tilt by Hackinson and all. Three-dimensional cameras looked at the external rotation and the trunk lean of these players. Radar guns to help get the velocity. Mound and plate had to be at regulation distances, which is 60 feet 6 inches. And then the Modus baseball system was probably the most high-tech, most important piece of equipment that was used. That's what the previous study by Leafblad and all, used to gather this information. It's a sleeve that is able to take all these little pieces of technology that are in there. It records external rotation, Varus torque levels, arm rotation, external rotation, internal rotation of the arm, and arm speed, and allows it to be sent to a database that allows practitioners to look at the information that is being provided by the sleeve. And then Also, what to do with Varus torque, injury prevention and rehab. So just looking at a study by Barnes and all, look to rehab measures with UCL surgery, found that extension is okay, but flexion past a certain degree may put stress on the UCL, and then isometric flexion and extension exercises are safe unless performed at 90 degrees of flexion. Internal rotation exercises may place stress on the ligament. So this kind of shows certain ways to go about the rehab side with the data that is provided through these studies, and just allowing us to protect the new ligament that is being placed inside the body once coming back from injury, because these pitchers are going to have only so many bullets in that reconstructed elbow that we want to be able to take care of them and provide the best rehab we can. I just want to thank you all for listening to my presentation on Varus torque in the elbow of pitchers in baseball. Thank you.